Yeah, welcome back. In this session, we are going to be looking at CSS syntax and selectors. There's a way you write CSS, and this picture, which I got from tutorial points, explain the way CSS syntax are always written and is always written. Now, you see that the first thing here, you have the selector, where you select the element that you want to style. In this case, they are selecting the element by the element name or by the tag name, and that shows they are styling the table. So this is the selector. So you select the element you want to tag because you need to be specific. You need to specify the element that you want to tag. And in this case, I or they want to style the table element, and that's why they are selecting. So this is the selector. And now after the selector, you now open a curly braces. The curly braces is what we call the declaration. So where you declare the property, and the declaration always it's like a key value pair where you define the key, which is the CSS property that you want to apply to the HTML element, and the value is now the property that you want to assign. Is now the exact style that you want to assign to that particular HTML element. So the selector, the declaration, and the declaration as a property together with the value. Now you see that you have been doing that before. Here we selected this is our selector, we in this case the HTML element, and in here we have the declaration in a curly braces, and in the declaration we have the property. In this case, the color is the property, and the value is that we want the value to be color blue. We want the value to be color blue. Now that is the syntax of CSS. Now going forward, now we have different ways by which you can select the element that you want to style. The first selector that we have is the universal selector. So we have the universal selector, the element selector, the class selector, the ID selector, group selector, descendant selector, child selector, adjacent sibling selector, and so on like that. And we are going to be looking at examples of all the selectors in this section. So the first one, which is the universal selector, is that you want to select all the elements on the page irrespective of the name, irrespective of the tag, irrespective of the class. Most of the time we use it to set our page to set to default styling. So sometimes maybe you have don't forget I've linked the CSS. So I'll be writing the CSS here, or I can just yeah. So let me just copy this first one, then I come here. So the first thing we are doing here is, let me see if I can zoom in more. Now if I comment this, so the first thing we are doing here is universal selector. So if to select all the elements on the page, you use this asterisk sign. Use asterisk sign, and most of the time we use to set, maybe you want to set the margin, you don't want some funny margin to be disturbing your styling, so you want to set the margin to 0, and we are still going to look at the meaning of margin later on. So padding to 0, and the style we apply to all the elements on the page. But to make it more visible, let's just add some elements to this our HTML page. Let's just add h2 elements lorem 3 this time around, and maybe we add the paragraph to be maybe 100 modes of 30, and let's see, we have button, and we say click me, and we have that on our page. Oh, let me just break it so that we have some space. Let me just break it. Now even before I break it, let's see something. Let me comment this out for now, so that you see that the universal selector is actually doing its work. So if I come back to the CSS now, let's say I comment this out. I want You can see that by default, even though I've commented out the break line or the break point, I have some spacing, like in between the heading, the paragraph, there's some spacing. But because I selected all the elements and I remove all the margin, I remove all the page, all the padding, which is majorly for spacing, which you are going to look at, which you are going to look at later. It remove all the You can see now that all the spacing removed because of this universal selector. Now let's see with this universal selector, if I say okay, the color, which I think you are now familiar with, like we use it to style the color of the text. Let's say I want the color to be orange this time around. If I save, all the elements on the web page is going to have color orange because I use this universal selector. So if you want to select all the elements on the web page, you use this asterisk sign. So that's the first CSS selector. Now the second CSS selector is the element selector. That means that you select the element or the HTML element that you want to style by the name of the tag. By the name of the tag. Don't forget that we have p tag for paragraph, we have div tag for container, we have h1 to h6 for header, we have table tag for creating table, so and so on and so forth. So any element that you want to style, you can select them by the name of the tag, and that is the second one, which is the element selector. You select it by the name of the tag. Let's say I want to style only the paragraph, then I'll select it using the name of the tag, which is p. So if I want to select it, I'll just say p, and the p here will now be okay. Let me say I want to also, let's see, let me just still limit it to color this time for now. So I want it to be this color. So you can see that the paragraph that I have here has taken the color that I've defined here. So if let's say I define another paragraph, so all this style is going to be applied to all the paragraphs. So let me just say this is another paragraph. It's another paragraph. Let me create the spacing now because I've removed the, so that we can see it now. So I can see that this, and create this now. You can see that this paragraph and this, it selects all the paragraphs on the page and it give it the color aqua. Now that is that about. So if let's say I want to select button, then the same things apply. I'll just say button, which is the name of the tag, and maybe I want to increase the height. I can increase the height to, let's say I want to increase the height to maybe 34 pixels. So you can see that the height has increased. Why? Because I selected this element's name, which is button, and I define a property for it, and the property applies to it. So now that is that about element selector. So we also have class selector. That means that you can select elements based on the name of the class, and this is the most popular way of selecting HTML element anytime you want to style it, because if you say you should select it by the tag name, then you might be using another paragraph in on your web page where you don't want this color to be applied, but because you have generalized it, it is going to apply to all the paragraph. But in this case, you can just, okay, it's only the paragraph tag that has this class name that I want them to have this color. So this is the most popular or most common, especially when it comes to when it comes to CSS styling. So now, how do you do that? So that means that, okay, let me just say, so you can define your, okay, let me come here again. Okay, let me remove that spacing. I think we have sent that in action. Let me just comment it out, and I just save. It's giving me, it's making me, okay. Now let's just say div, and I have some, okay, let me use what I've created before. Okay, so now you can define a class property. Don't forget, in our HTML we define a class property. Let's say I want this class to be, I want it to take text to be blue. I want the text to be blue. So I can define this class name, and make sure that your class name is always descriptive. So maybe I want the text to be blue. I define it and I come to my CSS. Then to select this element by its class name, I have two options. Is that I go with h2 dot text blue. This means that all the h2 elements that has a class of text blue, apply to it. Then I can decide, okay, I'm not applying to only the h2 element, any element that has class text blue I want to apply to it. And I'll just say dot the name of the class, and I'll open my declaration. So just take note of the fact that anytime you see a dot, in front of your selector, then you should know that you are selecting that element by the name of the class. Selecting the element by the name of the class. So if you want to restrict it to a particular element, then you can now say the name of the element dot the class. So let's define it now. Let's say color now to be blue. So in that case, it's going text blue. Text blue in that case. Okay, if I comment this out, and if I put the color here, color blue. Oh, I see. Now the yeah, sorry about that. It's actually because it's live server that it's trying to show itself, so I have to come here and reload before the style was applied. So I think the problem was with live server was not reloading automatically, so as expected. So this stuff still applies. So if I comment this out, so and I save, then the color stays. So if I change this to maybe red and I save, then you can see that I have the color to be red. So now, so that is that about that. So you can also, okay, you can also limit it to text. Okay, let me use text red now, and let me change this to blue. So this is just a way of limiting it to a particular tag that has this class. So let me say text class text red, and I make the color to be red. So any class, any HTML element that has this class, then this property will be applied. So let me say I come here and maybe I apply a class here. Let's see if this will take preference. So if I save it and I come and refresh, you can see that I have my that paragraph that has a class of text red. The color is now red because I selected the element with the class name and I added the property of color with a value of red to it.